Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. Welcome back to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media Radio. As we know that we're up to, somewhere between day 5 and day 6 of fighting in Israel and the Gaza Strip, as the Israelis have mounted a counter-offensive against the Hamas, who earlier this week decided it was to kidnap and attack citizens in the area, just civilians. Let's capture them, let's kidnap them, let's torture them, let's try to kill them. It was the idea. We have also heard from the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations that he says that the Hamas directive is solely there as a form of genocide, and how their directive says that if you're a Muslim person, that you should, if you come in contact with a Jew, that you should kill the Jew. That may seem to be a bit dramatic, but the fighting has in this region has gone off and on for a very long time. Most of us can simply say that we cannot remember a time where there was absolute peace. There was quiet, but not absolute peace. So we're watching them back at it again. They're fighting the Palestinians, but this time it is a extremist group and not the Palestinian government. And matter of fact, we're going to hear from the Palestinian ambassador to the United Nations that more has to be done to address ideas of a two-party state, or should I say two-member state, where both the Palestinians and the Israelis hold power, where the people themselves can enjoy the Holy Land together and in peace. So, where's this all going to lead? And what are the Israelis, what are the Palestinians actually going to do to pull off peace? What are the efforts going to look like to get the hostages negotiated away from the Hamas? And what about the threats that Lebanon and Iran have made, that if the United States gets involved, that they will push forces to aid Palestine? For that matter, should as it usually happens, should the United States, Canada, and Britain get involved with military action, or should we all just sit and let the Palestinians and the Israelis settle it out? Allow them to figure out a path to peace, so that it's not the government that truly suffers. It is the average person, the person that just wants to go to work and have a good life. He's the one who actually suffers. They're the people who suffer and suffer the most, because civilians can't even fight back. You have no weapons. You don't have bullets, you don't have grenades, you don't have tanks. The military has them. So you're caught in the crossfire between two militaries, and you just simply put, you can do nothing more than watch your home be torn apart. Why don't we listen to what was said on the United Nations floor around the actions that are happening as the Palestinians did a press conference talking about what they would like to see happen and how they would want to work with the world towards peace. We're also going to hear from opposition leader in Canada, Pierre Poilievre, as he, of course, criticizes Justin Trudeau, and he also throws in some steps that might actually slow the pacing of the Hamas and the money that they get through what would seem to be Canadian sources. So why don't we listen to the interviews today and come back for final thoughts.
What are you expecting from especially from Israel and Hamas?
I'm sorry?
What are you expecting from today's meeting, especially on Israel Hamas war?
Well, I anticipate we'll receive an update on the situation there. It appears to be, continues to be quite volatile, and I'm sure we'll receive an update. And also, there are a number of steps that we are all taking, every nation is taking, in order to secure the safety of their citizens who are currently in Israel.
Is here. He will take part in your meeting. So
Yes.
the expectations, and can we expect some new packages of aid? And what about F-16's coalition?
Yes, well, of course, President Zelensky was in my country in Canada just a few weeks ago, where we announced a significant new contribution of $650 million in light armored vehicles and armored Medivac vehicles. And today we'll also be announcing some additional winter supplies, some additional ammunition from our country. And I know, first of all, the President will, I'm sure, provide us with an update of the current military situation in the Ukraine. And then there'll be, as the UNDG always does, we'll have a robust discussion on how we can help them.
Minister, the question about do you think that war against Ukraine and war against Israel is one war, it's a part of one global conflict, or there are two different wars?
Well, certainly we are concerned about the attack that occurred in Israel, but it appears to have been an incursion of a terrorist organization that's gone in and killed innocent people and children, and of course Israel has every right to defend itself. And in that regard, it is somewhat similar to the situation in Ukraine, but they're not the same. Ukraine has been invaded by a foreign country, and the illegal invasion by Russia of the Ukraine is a very serious conflict, and we are engaged in providing them with as much assistance as they require.
How much are you concerned? Some of the leaders from Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Iran said if NATO and the USA supporting Israel, and then they will support Hamas.
Well, I'm sure that there are all sorts of, there's a great deal of work going on diplomatic channels. I know my country is involved in some of those diplomatic discussions. And at the same time, I think we all recognize that Israel has a right to defend itself from this incursion and from the murder and kidnapping of their citizens.
Sweden is not part of the alliance yet. What importance does Sweden have for the defense of Northern Europe?
Actually, as an Arctic nation ourselves, we are very interested in working very closely with Sweden in the far north, and Canada supports Sweden's application and ascension in NATO as well, and we are going to continue to work with our NATO allies.
Turkish and Hungarian counterparts.
There are ongoing discussions with all of our NATO counterparts, and I'm sure those discussions will also take place today. Sorry?
Back to Ukraine. Now that the US might divert their attention, do you expect Europe to step up the support to Ukraine?
Well, first of all, I don't think that the United States, in all our conversations with our American allies, their attention and their support for Ukraine is unwavering and resolute. And I anticipate that will continue. And at the same time, we know that there are other conflicts in the world, particularly in Israel, that is deeply concerning to all of us. And the United States will be there to support them as well, as I understand. All right, thank you all very much. Have a good day.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. I just want to put you in the picture of the latest of meetings and contacts during the last 2 days. The Secretary General who spoke to you, I believe, just minutes ago, was in contact with President Abbas 2 days ago, and he raised with President Abbas the effort of the Secretary General to have humanitarian corridors and to address the extremely critical and catastrophic situation of the civilians in the Gaza Strip, and to provide them of the needed materials in terms of electricity, fuel, food, medicine, water, and so on and so forth. And President Abbas impressed on him the need of ending this onslaught and aggression against our people in the Gaza Strip. We appreciate the efforts of the SG, and he continued with this effort with a number of countries and agencies. The WHO is active, and it's raising the alarm that there has to be access to the Gaza Strip to provide medical and humanitarian assistance. UNRWA it has in its facilities, I believe now it is 92 facilities, as the SG said. They are housing about 220,000 displaced Palestinians. There might be an additional 100,000 who are looking for places to protect their families. The situation is extremely horrific against our civilian population. The destruction is beyond imagination, as you see, and you cover the situation and the story with your own cameras. So the whole world is seeing that catastrophe that is befalling on the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. Of course, we appreciate the efforts also of UNRWA, who's trying to send assistance, but they cannot. Egypt and others, Jordan, and the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, all are trying, to send assistance, but they are not succeeding so far. In addition to that, I met with the President of the Security Council about an hour ago in his chamber, and I raised with him, that this catastrophic situation the efforts of the SG, the efforts of all these agencies who are active in the humanitarian field, including UNRWA, WHO, and the readiness of many countries, including Egypt and Jordan, of stepping up to the plate and helping. We appreciate all these efforts, and we will continue the contacts with everyone, including the Security Council, so that the international community to shoulder its responsibility in stepping to the picture and in putting an end to this onslaught against our people. But more importantly, that would require, of course, sending humanitarian assistance to the 2.3 million of Palestinians who live in the Gaza Strip. There has to be a humanitarian intervention in order to avoid a looming catastrophe and humanitarian massive crisis in the Gaza Strip. We will continue with these efforts with everyone. I understand that the Arab Emergency Ministerial Meeting just concluded a few minutes ago in Cairo. We will study what the outcome and see how we can fit all these things with our activities and our contacts with all concerned parties here at the United Nations. We hope very soon that the international community, led by the SG, led by the Security Council, will rise up to their responsibilities and begin with the process of sending humanitarian help and assistance to the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. This, of course, would require to have a ceasefire or stopping the bombardment of the Gaza Strip so that the convoys and the caravans would be able, to reach the Gaza Strip and to provide the assistance to the people there. And if we succeed in this collective effort soon, it is needed, it should take place, then that would open the stage for other possibilities to deal with all other pressing issues. This is what I wanted to brief you with, and I want to thank you again for being with us. Thank you.
Can we ask some questions?
I gave you everything that,
Well, we'd like to hear from you. Just,
okay,
I've been asked by UN Correspondents Association to thank you for the briefing on behalf of Valeria, who couldn't be here. My question is, first of all, have you called and have you gotten any reactions to humanitarian corridors? And the second piece of that is, since you're there, is there any agency or government that has asked you to help find hostages? Thank you. The first is humanitarian corridor.
The humanitarian, as I said, that the Secretary General in his telephone communication with President Abbas 2 days ago, he was pressing for the humanitarian corridors and humanitarian assistance. I believe that he said that to you in this room a few minutes ago. We appreciate what he said, and of course we support him completely in that call for providing humanitarian assistance and humanitarian corridors. Yes.
Thank you. And has anyone reached out to you on hostages from other countries? I mean, to help find?
I am not aware of that. I am, the ambassador of the State of Palestine to the United Nations. Okay. ايش اللي بدك اياه بالعربي؟ اللي قلته؟ Okay. May I, please?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Could
thank
you
you.
do Arabic after we finish in English?
So what do you yield to this distinguished young lady?
I'm sorry, on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association, thank you for doing this briefing.
You're very welcome. Okay.
Pamela said so. Both Mr. Ambassadors, this attacks by Hamas and the reactions have certainly put a spotlight again on the decades-old conflict between the Palestinians and Israel. Trying to look ahead, which I know is difficult at this point, what would you like to see come out of this violence at the end? Do you think that there's perhaps now a broader interest in trying to resolve the conflict?
Well, before I give the floor to my friend, let me just say a few things. In the press conference that I had a few days ago, I left at the end by saying that we have three pressing issues that we need to address. The first one is to stop this carnage of civilians, and as we see it displayed in the Gaza Strip, meaning that the immediate issue that all of us should come into agreeing to is to stop the fighting, to allow humanitarian assistance to reach the people there so that we can, after that, address the issue of the protection of civilians, especially civilians in the occupied territory. And thirdly, to start thinking about a political horizon. Now, if we keep repeating the same thing of one cycle after another cycle of violence every few years, and expecting that in one hand for some, the elimination of the Palestinian people and the Palestine problem, and that is not happening. We've been in that situation so many times before, and those who thought that, and Prime Minister Netanyahu said it more than one time, the Palestine question is behind us, the Palestinian problem is finished, the Palestinians are behind us, or so that if you keep repeating that, expecting different results than what you're receiving, which is more and more of tragedies and pain and hatred and deepening of the conflict, then you are delusional. You are not living reality. What we need, if people, to learn the lessons from all these tragic, incidents, is to move in the direction of making peace. Peace would require that the Israeli side to recognize that we exist and we are humans and we have national rights and aspirations, and these national rights and aspirations should be fulfilled, and there is global consensus on them. The two-state solutions and people to live in peace and harmony as good neighbors, which would require the end of occupation. And I sincerely hope that that would be the case. And I'm like you, I read, many things that you publish, and I read articles in the New York Times where some people were trying to draw similarity between what happened in October 1973 and this time, this October, that when things to calm down, that maybe there will be a peaceful solution to this conflict that lasted way for too long, for 75 years. So I sincerely hope that we do not keep addressing the cycles of death and destruction in which the civilian population, and here I'm talking in our case about the Palestinians, but of course there is also suffering by civilians on the other side, that we need to move away from repeating these cycles which they create all this devastation and pain, to move in the direction of having a peaceful solution on the basis of the global consensus, which is a remarkable thing. Maybe the question of Palestine may be the only question in which there is global consensus around it. Let's implement the will of the international community on the basis of this global consensus. And I can assure you that there are, that the Palestinian people and their leadership are so strongly committed to that trend, but instead of strengthening that trend, there are those who are marginalizing that trend, and then therefore you will see the different forms of resorting, to the things that lead to all these tragedies. Majid, if you want to say something.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just to complement what Ambassador Riyad have just said, if Israel believes that military action is going to settle the Palestinian question, they're wrong. It could have happened 2006 with the attack on Lebanon, 2008, 2014, many other times that attacks have happened, and it led to no result. Palestinians are adamant, and the Palestinian question and Palestinian issue remains the central issue for the League of Arab States and for all the Arab countries, despite everything that is happening, whether it is the Abraham Accords, whether it is any other developments in the political track. The Palestinian issue is the central issue for the whole Arab League and its member states. And that is the main essence where the resolution that was adopted today of the League of Arab States Council of Ministers is leading from. This resolution, if you allow me to give you just a glimpse, it will come to you as an official document, but it will take a couple of days or 3 days. Just it has three preambular and 12 operative paragraphs. The three preambular is I will just try to summarize it from Arabic copy that is before me. That is reaffirming the centrality of the Palestinian question and the need to fulfill all the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people, the inalienable legitimate rights of the Palestinian people. Above all is the self-determination and living in peace in its independent, sovereign state on the borders of the 4th of June 1967, with East Jerusalem as its capital. The second one is upholding the commitment to comprehensive, just peace in the Middle East on the basis of the two-state solution as a strategic objective of Arab countries to protect the country and all its peoples and its states and its future from violence, wars, and its destructive impacts. The third one is the reaffirmation on all other resolutions. The main operative paragraphs, first emphasizing the importance to cease fire in the Israeli war on Gaza and on the escalation in the West Bank and the surrounding, inviting all parties to self-restraint, warning from the catastrophic humanitarian security impact of this kind of escalation and expansion, working with the international community on launching an effective and immediate move to an implementation of international law in protection of the security of the region and its stability, of the escalation of cycles of violence which everybody is going to suffer from, condemnation of killing civilians on both sides or targeting civilians on both sides, and condemnation of all actions that are against international law, international humanitarian law, and international human rights law, and reaffirmation on the need for protection of civilians in harmony with the common humanitarian values and international law, and on the reaffirmation on the need to release all civilians and all hostages and
prisoners, Palestinian prisoners.
All prisoners. and then condemnation of for all what the Palestinian brotherly people is suffering from aggression, from violations for its rights, and reaffirmation of the need to lift the embargo that is imposed on Gaza Strip and allow immediately and without delay for entry of humanitarian assistance, food, fuel, and other necessary means of life, including through the United Nations, particularly the UNRWA, and cancellation of all Israeli decisions to stop supplying Gaza with electricity and water, and reaffirmation on the need of the Arab states and the international community to provide financial support for the UNRWA to make it able to meet its commitment at this particular time. There are some other provisions on the internal side from the Arab work, but the reaffirmation on the need for Israel to commit to implement its commitment as occupying power and to stop all Israeli unilateral illegal actions that are codifying the occupation and endangering the two-state solution and the possibilities to reach just and peace, including building of settlements and the expansion of settlements, confiscation of lands, deportation of Palestinians of their homes, military operations against cities and camps, Palestinian camps, and attacks on the holy sites, Islamic and Christian. The peace and security in the region is the basis for our work, and the rest is going to be the same, and it's coming in the same effort. So this is what is the basic results that came out of the meeting of the Council of Ministers of the League of Arab States. Thank you.
Ambassador, can I ask you?
In Arabic, for Nabil. I promised Nabil,
I just
to
have
say.
a quick follow-up. What specifically?
We need to say something in Arabic, please.
Because we're covering this live,
We'll
so
follow up
it's very
afterwards.
important for us to have at least a brief
Do
statement.
you insist on the follow-up now? Edith, come. Okay. Ask, come on.
I just wanted to know what specifically, especially the Arab League is doing to prevent spillover into the region.
You are facing me.
Yeah, I will only answer if you come here. No, the Arab League didn't just wait till this to happen in order to start working on the peace process. You know, from last year, we held a meeting with Saudi Arabia, with the European Union, and others to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Arab Peace Initiative of 2002. And we agreed on relaunching again from our side in view of the decision of some big powers to look eastern and not to look to the Middle East. We agreed that we will work closer with the European Union and with other partners that are willing to work on the peace process in the Arab world. And we started this work last year. And there was another meeting that was held in Brussels in March this year between the European Union and the Arab League. And there was a meeting in the last high-level week that was chaired by Saudi Arabia and joined by Egypt and Jordan and the European Union and the Arab League, whereby we agreed to convene 3 committees, one political, one economic, one humanitarian, to get the peace process moving. But we cannot get the peace process moving without the support from the Security Council, whereby the quartet has not met for several months or several years, and whereby main parties in the peace process are not even paying attention to what is happening in the Middle East. We will have a meeting on the 20th on the role of the regional organizations in working with the United Nations in achieving peace and security. And I'm going to say that in that meeting, because we cannot work alone. We have to work. Either we work with the UN or we work with other outside powers and people who would like to reach peace. But if there is no wish to peace, and if everybody in the Western media is coming to say we are only supportive for Israel and we don't want to talk about peace, this is not going to help. That is what I can say to you.
Okay, good afternoon and guten Abend, everyone. We're very pleased to have with us some guests from Germany, courtesy of the Rias Institute, and welcome to today's briefing. Thanks. Come on around. No, you got time. I'm not trying to rush anyone. All right. Good afternoon. The High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, issued an urgent plea today to all states with influence to take steps to defuse the powder keg situation in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories. He stressed that international humanitarian law and international human rights law must be respected in all circumstances. He said that all parties must immediately cease attacks targeting civilians and attacks expected to cause disproportionate death and injury of civilians or damage to civilian objects. The High Commissioner called on Palestinian armed groups to immediately and unconditionally release all civilians who are captured and are still being held. And he added that the imposition of sieges that endanger the lives of civilians by depriving them of goods essential for their survival is prohibited under international humanitarian law. Lynn Hastings, the humanitarian coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territory, said today that Israeli authorities have cut their water supply to Gaza, reducing an already scarce availability of potable water. And in accordance with the complete siege ordered by the Israeli government on Gaza, access to electricity, food, and fuel have also been severed, inevitably worsening the already dire humanitarian situation. Palestinians in Gaza now only have electricity to 3 to 4 hours per day. This hinders the ability of health facilities to function and treat those injured, she noted. She said that the United Nations and its humanitarian partners in the occupied Palestinian territory are working to meet acute needs, in particular shelter in dangerous circumstances. However, access for humanitarian staff and supplies into Gaza has also been cut, and the intensity of the hostilities is limiting the ability of staff to deliver aid. Hospitals in Gaza are overwhelmed with mass casualties and are running low on medical supplies. Ambulances are running out of fuel. Moreover, healthcare facilities and personnel have been affected by the attacks. Since hostilities began, 8 healthcare facilities in Gaza have been damaged. The UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees reports that mass displacement rapidly increased in the past 24 hours across the Gaza Strip. OSHA has reported that in Gaza, at least 200,000 of the 2.2 million residents have been displaced after fleeing for fear of their lives or their houses were destroyed by airstrikes. Nearly 137,500 internally displaced people are sheltering in 83 UNRWA schools in all areas of the Gaza Strip. As heavy airstrikes continue, more and more IDPs seek shelter in UNRWA's schools. Every effort is being made to provide basic services to the IDPs. However, the conditions are difficult, with some shelters overcrowded and with limited availability of potable water. In coordination with the World Food Programme, bread was distributed to the displaced people in the shelters. Last night, a building housing the UN Relief and Works Agency headquarters in Gaza City sustained significant damage as a result of airstrikes nearby. All UN international staff present in Gaza are taking shelter in another building within the same compound. UNRWA did not record any casualties among its staff during this incident. However, 2 UNRWA staff members and 5 UNRWA students have been killed since the 7th of October. United Nations buildings and facilities must be protected at all times, including in times of conflict. The Secretary General this morning introduced the proposed program budget for 2024 at the 5th Committee of the General Assembly. He said that this budget is being put forward as we face challenges on every front. The role of the United Nations has never been more vital, and we're stepping up our efforts. To fully implement our mandates, the Secretary General said, we will require a total of $3.3 billion. This includes a total of 10,334 posts, a net increase of 199, excluding special political missions. Most of the additional posts are required to implement new intergovernmental mandates. Mr. Guterres warned that the UN's liquidity situation has worsened this year, with lesser collections through the end of the third quarter. Specifically, we have collected only 64% this year, compared to 71.9% in 2022 and 82.7% in 2021. He called on member states to pay their dues fully and on time. The Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, concluded her 3-day visit to Iceland today. During her visit, Ms. Mohammed held a number of bilateral meetings with senior government officials, including President Guðni Johansson, Prime Minister Katrin Jakobsdóttir, and the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Þórdís Kolbrún Reykfjord Gylfadóttir. In her engagements, Ms. Mohammed highlighted the role of Iceland as well as the wider group of small states in advancing multilateral solutions to key issues facing the world, including climate change, global peace and security, and the need to reform the international financing architecture to better service people and the planet. She also exchanged views on these issues with parliamentarians and young people. Ms. Mohammed visited areas affected by the climate crisis, including Iceland's second largest and fast-melting glacier, Langjökull, and the ice cave. With less than 2 months until COP28, she called for action for those on the front lines. Earlier today, the Deputy Secretary General attended the Imagine Forum, Nordic Solidarity for Peace event. She stressed that the rise of conflicts and unsettling developments of the last few days should not be a reason for the international community to give up, but rather step up to restore peace. Ms. Mohammed outlined that creating a peaceful future for all requires doubling down on sustainable development and reinvigorating multilateralism. Among other things, she underscored the need to end the wars across regions and on nature, which is exacerbating conflicts and challenges. Ms. Mohammed left today to Marrakesh, Morocco, for the annual meetings of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. In Afghanistan, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that aftershocks continue 3 days after the earthquake which struck Herat province and affected more than 12,000 people. The district of Zindajan is the worst affected area, with more than 1,300 people killed and nearly 500 people still reported missing, according to community-level assessments. The latest UN satellite imagery also indicates extreme levels of destruction in the district of Injil. We, along with our partners, are on the ground and providing assistance. The World Food Programme distributed high-energy biscuits to more than 450 households in Zindajan district and dispatched 75 tons of food to Zindajan and Gularan districts. Health partners are providing emergency trauma care in Herat Regional Hospital, which is the main referral hospital, as well as primary health care and mental health support in affected villages. The UN Refugee Agency has responded with an initial delivery of 250 tents and 1,190 blankets to families. Some 1,050 core relief items will be distributed to households who have lost everything, including kitchen sets and basic hygiene items. The International Organization for Migration has also delivered emergency shelter tents, non-food items, and repair toolkits and water trucks. UNICEF has distributed hygiene kits and soaps and is providing water trucking. UNFPA has also provided dignity kits and mother and baby kits to affected communities and is also providing specialized counseling. Our humanitarian colleagues warn that children are particularly vulnerable and have suffered severe psychological distress from the earthquake. They require mental health and psychosocial support. Turning to Myanmar, we are alarmed by reported attacks on a camp for displaced people in Kachin State. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says that according to reports from humanitarian partners, 30 internally displaced people and other civilians were killed and dozens more injured. This incident affected a village and an adjacent displacement camp, which is home to more than 6,000 people. Kachin has seen an escalation in fighting over recent months, driving a surge in displacement, as well as worsening needs and protection concerns. Humanitarian organizations have faced severe access restrictions in this part of Kachin for many years. Our partners need unimpeded and safe access to deliver timely and efficient assistance to displaced communities. Yesterday's incident underscores the dangers faced by the nearly 2 million people who are now displaced in Myanmar, including 1.7 million people who have fled their homes as a result of conflict and insecurity since February 2021. The humanitarian response plan for Myanmar, which calls for nearly $890 million, is just 28% funded. This morning, the Special Representative of the Secretary General for Iraq and head of the UN Assistance Mission there, Janine Hennis-Pleshert, briefed Security Council members on recent developments in Iraq and the Secretary General's latest report on UNAMI. She noted that long-awaited reforms in the banking and finance sectors are now underway, adding that the Iraqi parliament adopted the federal budget law, which represents the highest proportionate allocation to the delivery of social services yet, and will hopefully expand access to healthcare, education, and other services. Her full remarks were shared with you. Bless you. Yesterday in Moscow, the Secretary General of the UN Conference on Trade and Development, Rebecca Greenspan, and Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Martin Griffiths, who appeared by video link, continued consultations with the Russian delegation led by Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Vershinin. They focused on global food security. Following the meeting in Moscow, Ms. Greenspan and Mr. Griffiths today held further consultations on the same issue with the Turkish Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Burak Akçapar, in Istanbul, Turkey. The UN team noted that in an increasingly hungry world, all food supplies matter, and exports of agricultural products from the Black Sea remain critical to support global food security. The UN reiterated its determination to continue its efforts to facilitate unimpeded exports of food and fertilizer from Ukraine and the Russian Federation to global markets. Our peacekeeping colleagues in the Democratic Republic of the Congo are telling us that joint operations with the Congolese armed forces against the Codeco militia are continuing in Ituri's Jugu territory. As we mentioned, these operations were launched last week in response to threats against civilians and the presence of Codeco members in the area. This collaboration with the Congolese armed forces involves joint patrols, sharing of critical information, reinforcing military presence in affected areas, and establishing a protective perimeter around sites hosting internally displaced people. The joint efforts aim to halt ongoing clashes, protect civilians, and safeguard sites hosting tens of thousands of people displaced in Ituri province. Separately, the mission reports that in Ituri's Reti village, peacekeepers facilitated the release of 7 civilians that had been held by Codeco since the end of August. And today is World Mental Health Day. The theme this year is Mental Health is a Universal Human Right. In his message for the day, the Secretary General says mental health is not a privilege, but a fundamental human right and must be part of universal health coverage. And after you're done with me, you'll hear from Monica Villela-Greily, the spokesperson for the President of the General Assembly. Before we get to her, are there any questions for me? Yes, Benno.
Thank you, Farhan. Sorry, I came late because you were too fast for the elections. But I have a question about UNRWA and the Gaza Strip. You said yesterday, Steph said yesterday, you had pre-positioned some supplies in the Gaza Strip. Can you tell us how long the estimate is, how long they will last?
It's hard at this point to be able to calculate that because it's difficult to determine precisely what the needs are and how quickly our stocks will be used up. We're trying to do as much distribution we can under the conditions that we have, which, as I just pointed out at the part that you missed, are fairly difficult. So we're trying to see what can be done. Once we feel we're running out, we'll certainly raise the alarm in terms of the need to get more food in. But we're already making it clear that there needs to be the ability to deliver humanitarian aid and have it go to the people of Gaza. Both the Secretary General and today also the High Commissioner for Human Rights made that very clear.
And then we also talked yesterday about the freezing of aid potentially also to UNRWA from the EU and other countries. Did you get any official notice?
As far as I'm aware, there's no indication that the European Union will limit any aid that's going to the UN Relief and Works Agency. Ibtisam.
There was news reports about the Israelis striking the Rafah border crossing. Do you have any comments on that?
We're aware of these reports. Obviously, it's important. We want to see that there's open access into Gaza in order for humanitarian deliveries and other things to be made. And I would just refer you to what the Secretary General said to you yesterday on that.
Yeah, but the Israelis announced a full blockade. I mean, they have already a blockade on Gaza, but a total blockade that they are not going to allow.
Yeah,
the very little that was before allowed.
And I'll just repeat what I read at the start of the briefing from Volker Turk, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, where he made clear that the imposition of sieges that endanger the lives of civilians by depriving them of goods essential for their survival is prohibited under international humanitarian law. Celia.
Farhan, I'd like to know what is the credibility of the Human Rights Council when you have countries, part of it, who really don't respect the human rights. What do they do? What is their job?
This is a question that we repeatedly say the same things about this, which is that all of the countries who are on the Human Rights Council are themselves obliged to open up their own records for evaluation of their human rights. And indeed, we believe that no country has a perfect human rights record, but they need to be willing to undergo the sort of evaluation that can improve the human rights situations in their respective countries.
So do you believe that China has the right to be there? So why not Russia?
We believe that all of the countries that are elected onto the Human Rights Council by member states have therefore earned their right to be there. They then need to show and demonstrate, while they're on the Human Rights Council, their respect for human rights. Deji.
Yeah, back to Gaza. According to what you just read, so it's been confirmed that the siege was complete. I mean, there's no gas, no food getting any longer.
Well, you heard what I said at the start in terms of our concerns, and we continue to talk about the need to be able to get aid in. But as of right now, there's some very difficult situation caused by the siege of Gaza, including what I was mentioning about the water supply and the situation for fuel.
Has the SG already talked to Prime Minister Netanyahu, or he is planning to do that?
He is planning to speak to the Prime Minister, and he has spoken to the Israeli President, Chaim Herzog.
So has he raised the issue of the siege on Gaza?
He's been raising that with all of his interlocutors, and that is what he intends to do.
What would be
if he can talk to the Prime Minister?
Yeah, I mean, what would be the plan if the gas or other resources used up, like the pre-positioned stuff?
The point is that we want to make sure that whatever humanitarian aid is needed will be able to get to the people who need it.
One last question. I was thinking, if Israel had the siege completely with the Gaza Strip, which means that's not only to Hamas but also to those people who live in that strip, would that be considered an act of war crime? According to Geneva Convention.
My point is that the imposition of such sieges, as the High Commissioner pointed out, is prohibited under international humanitarian law. Celia, and then we'll go to Abdel Hamid. Sylviane, and then we'll go to Abdel Hamid.
Thank you, Farhan. Regarding the spillover, I'm talking again Gaza, the spillover of this war can come to haunt Lebanon, and it can come to haunt also the UNIFIL. How can we prevent this very dangerous situation? Is the United Nations and UNIFIL takes all the measures to prevent this in the South Lebanon?
Yes, on that. What I can tell you is that the UN Interim Force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, continues to be in contact with authorities on both sides and urges everyone to exercise restraint at this critical time. UNIFIL is doing its utmost to ensure that escalation does not happen. Our peacekeepers in Lebanon remain in their positions, and they're continuing their essential work, and that includes through activities coordinated with the Lebanese armed forces. And the main goal is to help avoid conflict between Lebanon and Israel. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Farhan. Is my voice clear? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. It's excellent.
Yeah. Yes, everything you said, Farhan, as Deji said, identifies this as collective punishment, and collective punishment against 2.3 million is a war crime. But no one is saying that. Why you don't qualify that as a war crime?
I would just refer you, there was a lengthy statement put out by the High Commissioner for Human Rights today, and I would refer you to what he has been saying.
Yeah, I just
but we have made it clear, we have made it very clear that we stand against all forms of collective punishment.
Yeah, I want to follow up with there is 140 children have been killed, 120 women. And you saw the level of destruction of buildings, of hospitals, schools, mosques, and not one single statement, Farhan, used the word condemn. Only they talk about concern, including Virginia Gamba's statement. She also spoke about her concern about children, UNICEF, UNRWA. None of them used the word condemn, and only that word was used against the Palestinians. Is there a fair treatment of both sides here? Why the word condemn is missing?
Yes, I believe that there is fair treatment. We made very clear our extreme concerns, and we want to make sure that no one who is a civilian on either side of this conflict is harmed, and we want to make sure that all of them are spared, and we will continue to do that. Yes, Vladimir.
Hi, Farhan. Vladimir Kosterev, TASS News Agency. About those talks Mr. Griffiths and Ms. Greenspan had in Moscow and then in Turkey. Can you tell us if there is any progress, any breakthrough?
I've given about as much detail on the talks as I could provide. Obviously, we are determined to achieve as much as we can, and we'll continue with this effort. Yes, Stefano.
Thank you, Farhan. The United States is sending, actually already sent, the U.S. carrier Gerald Ford toward Israel, in Israel. It's already there. And my question is, does the Secretary General think that this is going to help in kind of stabilize or helping not to this becoming even a bigger war, or is actually worse? It can escalate the situation.
The Secretary General in all of his communications is telling all the relevant leaders to do what they can to prevent any escalation of this conflict, including any spillover. And so that is where we will focus our attention. Evelyn.
Sorry. Just to find a microphone can be a problem.
Because it might take a seat.
Thank you, Farhan. Has the United Nations been able to send any supplies through the Egypt into Gaza from Egypt, or is that not a big enough?
At this point, we have not been able to do that. No. Benno.
Thank you. I have another follow-up about Gaza. Yesterday, you said there was 13,000 UN personnel in Gaza. Do you know if there are any casualties among them?
What I was able to say is that we are aware that 2 staff members of the UN Relief and Works Agency and 5 students for UNRWA have been killed since the 7th of October.
Okay, thank you. And then I have, about Haiti, 1 or 2 questions. Did you, I think it was a week ago, a bit more even, that the Security Council resolution was adopted. Did you get any notices of other countries wanting to step?
Well, there's nothing for us officially to confirm at this point. Ibtisam.
Farhan, we don't hear actually any calls from the from the Secretary General to stop the attacks on Gaza. Why is that? I mean, yesterday in his speech, he did talk, in his statement here, he did talk or asked Palestinian fighters and Hamas to stop their attacks on Israel, but there was no clear call for Israel to stop its attacks on Palestinians and the Gaza Strip. Why is that?
The Secretary General wants to make sure that all of this ends as quickly as possible with no harm to civilians. I would just refer you back to what he said yesterday, as well as what the High Commissioner for Human Rights has said today.
Yeah, but he didn't call. He said that they should comply with the international law and the law of war, etc. But he did not call on them not to attack Gaza.
Yeah, we're aware of what the situation on the ground is. We want to make sure that it ends without any impact or further killing or damage to civilians, and that is where our priorities lie at this stage. Yes.
Yes, a follow-up on this. Is the UN able to help any Gazian that at the moment would like to leave and go away from Gaza? Is the UN able to do that?
Right now, the way the situation is with the siege and the borders, it's difficult for anyone, including our people, to leave. For that to end, this restriction would have to also end. And again, you'll have heard what both Lynn Hastings and Volker Turk said today, and I'd just refer you back to them. And with that.
Thank you very much, everyone. It is, as I said earlier, great to be here in the beautiful Kelowna. However, I wouldn't be honest if I didn't say everything is broken after 8 years of Justin Trudeau and the NDP. And the people of Kelowna are suffering the worst from the NDP-Trudeau coalition. Here in Kelowna, we just got the numbers from the food bank. Highest in 41 years. Food bank directly attributes that to the inflation crisis. That's a crisis that Justin Trudeau and the NDP have caused. It's now $2,000 to rent a small apartment in Kelowna, forcing many to live in tents. Very large tent city now, right on the trail, which grows constantly. We didn't have it before Justin Trudeau. Before Justin Trudeau, that tent city was not there. That is the direct result of his inflationary policies that have doubled the cost of housing and driven up food prices faster than at any time in 4 decades. The catch and release criminal justice policies of Trudeau and the NDP have given Kelowna the highest crime rate in all of Canada. 10,000 crimes per 100,000 people. An astonishing amount of crime. That's 1 crime committed for every 10 citizens that live in Kelowna. That is the direct consequence of Justin Trudeau releasing the most violent criminals into our streets, decriminalizing heroin, crack, and other hard drugs, and wasting money going after lawful hunters and farmers rather than securing our borders to keep the illegal guns and drugs out. But the good news is, life wasn't like this before Justin Trudeau and the NDP, and it won't be like this after they're gone. A common-sense Conservative government led by Pierre Poilievre, and with the help of brilliant MPs like my Shadow Minister for Jobs, Tracy Gray, a brilliant former businesswoman and MP for the area, and Dan Albus and others, we will bring home lower prices by axing the inflationary carbon tax. We'll cap spending and cut waste to balance the budget to bring down inflation and interest rates. We'll bring home powerful paychecks with lower income tax that reward hard work. And by bringing in a Blue Seal exam so that our brilliant immigrant professionals can take a test, prove they're qualified, and work as doctors, nurses, engineers, and architects. By clearing the way to develop our resources, including forestry. We're going to bring homes that you can afford by incentivizing cities to speed up and lower the cost of building permits. Right now, Vancouver adds $1.3 million to the cost of every new home by its delays, its bureaucracy, its building permits, and its charges. A Poilievre-led government will incentivize Vancouver and other cities to speed up and lower those costs. We can build affordable homes. And once again, young people, seniors, and working folks can put roof overhead. We're going to bring home safe streets with jail, not bail, for repeat violent offenders, by jailing gun criminals and sealing our border from gun smugglers, and stopping the endless and senseless assault on our law-abiding and licensed hunters and professional sport shooters. We're also going to bring in treatment, not free drugs, treatment, so that we can bring our loved ones home drug-free and end the tent cities right across this country. It's time that we unite around common sense, the common sense of the common people, united for our common home. Now let's bring it home. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll now take questions from the floor.
Mr. Poilievre, over here it's Brady Strachan with CBC. Should Israel's right to defend itself, do you think, extend to justifying cutting off electricity, food shipments to Gaza, even for humanitarian purposes?
First of all, this is, I think, the first time I've had a chance to comment in person since Hamas's unprovoked, sadistic, terrorist attack, the most deadly attack on Israel in its history. We unreservedly condemn Hamas for this attack, and our heart breaks for every lost innocent life, Palestinian and Israeli. Let's remember that every loss of life in this conflict is the direct consequence of Hamas's conduct. Hamas is a sadistic, genocidal, terrorist death cult, and it must be stopped. And unfortunately, its evil and odious conduct is responsible for all of the suffering that we witness right now. So conservatives call for the government to take action to counter Hamas any way we can. And one way would be to impose more severe sanctions on Iran, which is the sponsor of Hamas, and to criminalize the IRGC, which is the terrorist arm of the Iranian government that coordinates support for Hamas and Hezbollah. It is perfectly legal right now for Iran to use Canada as a staging ground for the IRGC, which is the worst terrorist organization in the world. And conservatives are calling for the Trudeau government to finally ban the IRGC so that Iran can no longer use our country to carry out its evil works.
Okay, next question.
Could you answer in French, please?
Évidemment, le Parti conservateur condamne l'attaque terroriste d'Hamas. C'est un groupe terroriste sadique et qui supporte le génocide. Toutes les tragédies que nous voyons aujourd'hui sont les conséquences directes d'Hamas. Il faut se souvenir que c'est Hamas qui a causé ça, c'est Hamas qui a ciblé des civils. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle le Parti conservateur revendique que le gouvernement du Canada contre Hamas de toute façon disponible, y compris en mettant en place des sanctions, des nouvelles sanctions contre l'Iran et en interdisant le bras terroriste du gouvernement d'Iran, the IRGC, parce que ce bras terroriste est responsable de coordonner Hezbollah et Hamas. C'est clair que l'Iran a été impliqué dans la coordination de cet attentat terroriste. Ça aurait été impossible pour Hamas à Gaza d'organiser un tel attentat. Donc, c'est inacceptable que le gouvernement du Canada permette le bras terroriste d'Iran de lever des fonds, d'organiser et d'opérer ici au Canada sans sanction légale. Merci.
Okay, next question.
Welcome back to the Okanagan. We're seeing in your advertising a lot of emphasis on your plan to axe the carbon tax. You suggest in these ads that it would have a big impact on food prices. Is it possible that you're overstating the impact that the carbon tax has on food prices? And secondly, what would a Poilievre government do to discourage dependency on fossil fuels?
Thank you. So the first question was, is it possible that it's overestimated? No. If you tax the farmer who makes the food and the trucker who ships the food, you tax all those who buy the food. And ask the farmers in this region what they're paying for diesel now. Diesel is an essential on farms. There's no alternative. You need it for you need it for combines, for tractors, for drying. Well, in the case of drying, it's mostly natural gas, which is also taxed. So that all gets passed down to the people who buy the food. I have a tomato farm in my riding where they pay tax on the CO2 released into the greenhouse, even though that CO2 is absorbed by the plant life. Apparently Justin Trudeau missed that day in science class. But the Mexican tomato farmer doesn't pay Trudeau's tax, so it's cheaper to buy the Mexican tomato in Manotick, Ontario, than the Manotick tomato in Manotick, Ontario. But Canadians are paying more for foreign food rather than paying less for Canadian food. I will axe the tax to bring home lower gas, heat, and grocery bills. My plan on the environment is technology and not taxes. We need to greenlight green projects like nuclear power to reduce our dependence on coal. Carbon capture and storage so that our oil and gas sector can put the carbon back in the ground where it came from, and we can become the lowest emitting source of oil anywhere on planet Earth. Oil, by the way, will be used roughly 60 to 100 million barrels a day for the next 2 decades if you believe the International Energy Agency. So we think it should be low emitting Canadian oil to bring home that money to Canada. We need to green light tidal wave power off the East Coast, like the one that Trudeau killed in Nova Scotia. We need to green light Quebec's plan to double its hydroelectric capacity. We can't afford 5 or 6 years of federal red tape blocking hydroelectric dams that are going to be necessary to supply the kilowattage to power an electric economy. So where Justin Trudeau and the NDP want to raise the cost of traditional energy that we still need, I want to lower the cost of carbon-free alternatives. That's the fundamental change that I propose. It's common sense. Let's bring it home.
Okay. Next question.
Good morning, Mr. Poilievre. Madison with Castanet News in Kelowna. My question has to do with the crime rate. I know you mentioned Kelowna has the highest crime rate in Canada, and you talk about repeat offenders. You mention quite often jail, not bail. I'm just curious, what exactly would that look like?
So the reason I mention that is that Trudeau and the NDP have brought in automatic bail for repeat violent offenders. The BC Union of Mayors indicates that the same 40 offenders were arrested 6,000 times in Vancouver. So 40 offenders arrested 6,000 times. That's 150 arrests per offender per year. The police will tell you that those offenders commit most of their crimes when they're out on bail for their previous crime. So they get arrested in the morning. They say to the police, can you make this quick? Because I've got another engagement at noon. They get released. They commit another crime. They're arrested. Then they're out on by dinner time to commit their third crime of the day. They laugh at the police. And this is a deliberate decision by Justin Trudeau and the NDP with Bill C-75, and we saw the spike in crime follow immediately after that policy came into place. So my common sense plan is to make repeat violent offenders ineligible for early bail or parole. Very simple. They'll stay in jail where they can't commit crime.
Okay, next question.
Ron Seymour from the Kelowna Daily Courier. What do you make, sir, of Canada and Japan not being signatories to the G7 common statement on what's happening in Israel?
The 5 G7 countries, Germany, Italy, the UK, US, and Italy, all signed off a deal, and they didn't even ask Justin Trudeau. Can we be honest? They don't care what Justin Trudeau thinks. World leaders don't take Justin Trudeau seriously. They think he's a joke. He's being trampled on by world leaders all around the world. Look, when you look at Justin Trudeau at an international meeting, other leaders don't even want to shake his hand. He stands off in the corner while the adults have serious conversations. They know that he's decimated our military, that he embarrasses our country on the world stage, that he allowed a Nazi to be recognized at the state visit of the Ukrainian president, that he has no idea what he's talking about on matters of foreign policy. And they're tired of his pointless, meaningless virtue signaling that's backed up with no substance whatsoever. So right now, unfortunately, as long as Justin Trudeau's around, we will have no influence on the world stage. We need to bring in a serious leader who will rebuild our military, be a professional on the world stage, harness our natural resources, our energy as a geopolitical point of power. We could be breaking European dependence on Putin by selling our liquefied natural gas, but Trudeau blocks it because he doesn't think there's a business case. We could displace oil from Russia, from Iran, and other dictatorships if Justin Trudeau would stop waging war on our energy sector. We could be selling our civilian-grade uranium so that foreign countries could break their dependence on coal-fired electricity and build nuclear power plants. But these are all things that Justin Trudeau has failed to do because he is not a serious leader and the rest of the world looks at him as a joke.
Okay, next question.
Good morning, Mr. Poilievre. Jaden Wozni with Global Okanagan here in Kelowna. Question from Global National today, actually. Scott Moe's government has introduced legislation requiring educators to inform parents if a child comes to class wishing to be recognized by a different name or pronoun. I guess Blaine Haig.
Oh, we lost you there.
Somebody just shout it. Oh. Also campaign in favor of the same call an election in New Brunswick. I guess, do you think there's a role for the federal government on this issue, and do you and your caucus agree with these policies?
I think I've seen Justin Trudeau has tried to stick his nose in these decisions. It's time for Justin Trudeau to butt out. Conservatives support parental rights. We believe that parents are the final authority in raising their kids, and parents need to be informed of what goes on in their children's lives. So it's time for Justin Trudeau to butt out and parents raise kids. All right. Thank you very much, Ron.
Final thoughts. So we heard from the Minister of Defense, Bill Blair, on his way into a meeting with NATO, and of course that is one of the topics that will be discussed or was discussed and at the NATO meetings. What about Israel? How do we secure our citizens who are in Israel that have traveled to Israel? So we heard that. We heard from the people from Palestine. They want peace, and that is their main objective. They don't want war. They want to see a way that everybody can work together. We heard from Pierre Poilievre, and of course his constant criticism of Justin Trudeau, basically that being the opposition leader. If he wasn't criticizing Justin Trudeau on what he's doing, he probably wouldn't be doing his job. So, but the question does remain that he brought up: should Canada have a stronger leader at this time on the global front? And what our global leadership should be striving for is a way to bring everybody together at the table in a peaceful way, without the tanks, the drone strikes, the missiles, and the military. Thank you for listening. Please find that subscribe button wherever it is. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.